Hello, this is for a sound check. Ms. Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Demikoff?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Phytros?
Yes,
Thank you. Mr. Verselli? Mr. Verselli, can you hear us?
sorry, it was on mute. Yes, I can. Apologies.
Thank you.
Ridgefield Park Board of Education Open Public Meetings Act Statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Ridgefield Park Board of Education has caused notice of the meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and district website. Public participation instructions. Public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All public will be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually and telephonically via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone that wish to make comments during public participation need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The Business Administrator Board Secretary will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in the order that their hand was raised.
Like the opening meeting by saluting to the flag, please. Good evening, everyone. Yes. Can we have a motion to go into public session, please?
Motion to close the work session.
Okay, Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes? Mr. Gomes? Mr. Phytros?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mrs. McNeil?
Here.
Dr. Martinez?
Here.
Mrs. Orth? Here. Mrs. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Verselli?
Here.
And President Fernandez.
Here.
Also present are Wayne Demikoff, the State Monitor, Barry Haynes, Acting Superintendent, Kerry Wright, Board Attorney, and Carrie Grabstein, School Business Administrator.
No minutes to pass, correct? No minutes. Any communications? Okay. No communications. Moving on to committee reports, faculties and programs. Trustee Rodriguez.
None at this time.
Okay, moving on to our subcommittee of social justice, Trustee Martinez.
We did not meet this month.
Buildings and grounds, Trustee Cathcart.
I'm going to try to schedule a Ken Job to present to the Buildings and Grounds Committee this month on the master plan for the village.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Dave, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to plan a Buildings and Grounds meeting this month so we can have Ken Job present on the master plan for the village.
Got it.
Finance and insurance, Trustee Gomes.
The Finance Committee met yesterday. We discussed our end-of-year financial position. We're still on track to report a surplus, but wouldn't have a final number until we receive the final audit. We also discussed possibly doing an energy audit to see about replacing some of the lighting in the school system. So we'll do a cost benefits analysis on that. We also discussed some of the projects that we have going on. The AC in the cafeteria, auditorium, and the classrooms, which should be approximately $2.6 million and should be covered by the ARP grant. Finally, we discussed our legal costs, which is quite high, and try to determine if there's some ways that we can reduce those costs.
Thank you so much. Personnel trustee Gibbons.
Yes, we have met in June already, and we plan to meet before the next meeting again.
Thank you so much. Negotiations trustee Verselli.
Yeah, we have an upcoming meeting on July 6th. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Policy trustee Martinez.
Policy Committee met this week. We discussed busing and the use of facilities contracts.
That concludes our committee reports. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
So the superintendent report tonight will be brief. We put out a newsletter for the month of May and June, and that went out to all the parents and families in the community. It announced all the amazingly wonderful end of year promotions and graduations and events that we had. They were pretty exciting, and you can read all about that. It's posted on the website under Superintendent Communications. I'd invite you to take a look because that also summarizes some of the great social media that we have. I'd say there are 3 clerical changes in the agenda, and I'm going to announce them now. For faculty and program, the district calendar that is put out had a change that it now includes Juneteenth next year and recognizes the last 3 days of the year as half days. Also under finances, an updated quote for the Meadowlands, which was increased to $73,000. And under personnel, a clerical change to include Corinne Perron's salary, which is missing from the table. I'd ask Mrs. Grabstein to go ahead and talk about some of the board meetings this summer. We do not have official board meetings, but as Mrs. Grabstein will say,
We don't have an actual board meeting for July, but we do have 3 retreats scheduled. One is scheduled for July 14th at 5 o'clock, and that will be open to the public. One on Thursday, July 28th at 6:30 PM, and that will be open to the public as well. And then one on Saturday, August 27th at 9 AM, which will also be open to the public. I also wanted to point out that there was a typo on the June 15th meeting, 2023, that should read June 14th. I have one additional question, one additional comment on a finance resolution 309. Is it 319? 319. The total for, let me see. Bear with me for 1 minute. Resolution FI 319, the total is 22,796, but in the body of the resolution, the total reads 5,261.
thank you, Mrs. Grabstein. I'll conclude the superintendent report by saying that our summer academies have started. So we have Grant School and Roosevelt School housing our Title I students. We have about 30, a little more than 30 students in Grant School and more than 40 students at Roosevelt School, as well as our ESY program running at Lincoln currently. They will run through the beginning of August. Our high school academies for credit recovery will start at the beginning of next week. And as those get underway, as has already happened, the Meadowlands bus will be around doing the inquiry science experiments. And we've increased additional field trips to the Meadowlands this year. And we've added what are called brain breaks to the high school credit recovery program. So our high school students attending will get some additional activities and hopefully get hooked on some of the fun science experiments that they'll have as part of that. The board requested that I give them a summary of some of our summer academies. And I look forward to providing a summary and status and more information. Even though it's a board retreat, I'll be happy to share some more of that news of what's going on with our summer academies K-12 in the district. That concludes the superintendent report.
Thank you so much. Moving on to our monitors report.
Yes, the only thing I will report tonight is the legal fees. In regard to the legal fees that resulted from the action taken by the board, more specifically, the pending litigation with Dr. Bender, the Porzio Board attorney fees are now at $65,319.15. The state monitor attorney's fees are now at $1,701. And the Summit Risk Insurance Company attorney fees remains at $15,000 for a total of $82,020.15 through the May 2022 billing. That's my report.
Thank you. Opening the floor to citizens' comments on agenda items. Go ahead. Trustee Martinez?
Good evening. Before we begin public comment, as the chair of the policy committee, I wanted to remind everyone that we will continue to have two public comment periods, one on agenda and one off agenda items. There's a sign-up sheet at the podium. We'll call your name in the order that you sign in. Each member of the public will have 5 minutes to speak during each comment period. Time cannot be transferred to other individuals. The public comment period will be 1 hour for on-agenda items and 1 hour for non-agenda items. Thank you for your cooperation and support.
Ms. Janet Malou.
Evening, miss. How are you?
Hi there, Janet Malul, 163 East Grand. I'm looking at FP 146. It's the resolution about bringing in a guest speaker for a presentation on the new comprehensive health and physical education curriculum. Having spent many years in education, I read this. If this is going to happen in July and August, then there is really no time for parents or community questioning. This is just one thing, as I read it, as will be rammed down people's throats. And I'm not happy about it. I'm just glad I don't have children in the district or in school at this point. Would have made more sense had this been moved up, especially since you're saying you're really not having meetings over the summer. Next one is FI 337. The fact that we're looking at 130% over the state average for legal costs. If memory serves me correctly, this happened last year too, or the year before. We just heard from the state monitor that the legal fees just alone for Dr. Bender's case is over $82,000. We're still paying her salary, we're still paying her benefits. And I kind of wonder if those that voted to move her out still feel that this was a wise decision for the district. Because me personally, I look at this as you are wasting taxpayers' money. I have yet to hear a legitimate reason for her removal. And the fact that we are spending this kind of money on litigation, and this is nowhere near done. So by time we're done, you know this is going to be way over 100,000. And I can only imagine how many other lawsuits are floating out there that I'm not even aware of. Okay. I really think that something's got to be done about that. It happens once, okay, but now this is not the first time, and we're still looking at 130,000 percent over. That's a lot of money to waste, in my opinion. And it was brought up, I think, at the last meeting about having legal representation at every meeting. And just in glancing, I saw legal fees for 1 month was something like $2,400. You take that even over 10 months, that's a lot of money. And that doesn't count all these other things going on, I'm sure. lastly, P 313. I have to be honest, I'm baffled by this. There has been no movement. I've asked many times that if you're going to continue to have Dr. Haynes in an acting role, the writing on the wall, as I see it, is you're going to give him one more year in this position and he's just going to slide right in. And I don't, it's nothing personal, but I don't believe he's the right person for this job in this district right now. Maybe at another time, but not at this point. And as far as I could see, we are going downhill further and further. The costs keep going up. The education is okay, but I know of people that are saying that they don't want to keep their kids in district. I know people that drive their kids into Manhattan and are using their parents' addresses to put their kids into schools or charter schools there. And I know somebody else who said, I'll put my kid in a private school before I'll let them go into 8th grade here. So that's not the kind of, it's the word I'm looking for. That's not the kind of reputation that we want to see in this district, as far as I'm concerned. And as a homeowner who lives in the heart of the schools here right now, it's scary to me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, I clearly told you I did not, right? We were clear on that.
Then you need to
All right,
sign
and if you
in.
want me to be any clearer, I have to get to the airport. Okay, let's stop playing games.
Oh, I'm not playing games.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm
I
telling you.
asked you to sign in.
Okay,
Can you sign in?
I'll give you my autograph afterwards, all right?
Okay.
All right, Kelly Delia, 24 Central Avenue, 9A. Right? It should behoove you tonight to vote no on Dr. Haynes. You're a well-educated guy, you're a professional, but I'm sure in another place you would fit in quite well. Maybe out of Morris County, right? But you know, you just happen to fall into place in a big horror show. That's right here before us. Owe it to us. It's time for the horror show to end, right? The stench is spreading throughout the state. A lot of people in education are talking about Ridgefield Park. It's a shame. Barry, not for nothing. You know, you have quite a track record. I'm sure your talent could be used in technology, but how is that being used here? I don't know. Superintendent, maybe in another school district, I'm sure you would fit in quite well, but we have a horror show here before you came in, and it just doesn't seem to get better. But it's up to the people before us and the people that we don't see here before us tonight, you know, who exist behind the scenes to make a change in the horror show. And please save it next time, okay? I'm not
Sign
part of
in.
the horror show.
Sign in.
Excuse me, you got the wrong guy. I'll gladly meet you outside and give me your autograph, all right? Give me a piece of paper and I'll sign my autograph. Sharpie marker, whatever you want.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, pal.
Thank you. Have a safe flight.
Thank you.
Have a safe flight.
And instead of Turnpike Barry, Route 80 Barry, Mendham.
Moving on to our agendas. People who signed in
Hi, I was actually in front of him, but, okay, Leslie Gottlieb.
can't control the traffic.
Okay. Leslie Gottlieb, 464A Liberty Street, Little Ferry. I was having two questions. There was a resolution about the volunteer football coach, the job description, but that didn't appear to be attached to anything. I didn't see it online.
It's new business. I'd gladly
Okay.
give you a copy of mine.
Okay, no, I just didn't see it. Second thing, the resolution regarding the legal costs. Now, we're supposed to cap it at 130%. So what is the 130% number supposed to be that we're supposed to not go over? And what we're admitting in that resolution, our efforts to control it failed. What efforts did we make? I mean, we have a lot of legal stuff. I'm sure it's not all Dr. Bender, but are you guys making any progress on resolving them? You know, I know a lot you can't say, but you know, it just seems there's a lot of money, and I'm not talking about having a lawyer at the meeting. I understand that. That's one thing, but it seems like there's a lot of other costs that you can't or don't document, And, it definitely is a perception and it's a lot of money. And, again, it sounds like you're admitting failure if you've had this the past couple of years.
Thank you for your comments.
Jennifer Louisi?
Jennifer Leuzzi, 3 Monette Street in Little Ferry. Hi. I have a question on P313. Dr. Haynes, he's on the agenda for another year at a salary of $180,000. Why is his salary so high? What actually is his job description? Because at one time, Little Ferry had Frank Scarafield as the principal as well as a superintendent, and he did not take a salary increase. He did 2 jobs at 1 pay. I have a big issue with this. We as Little Ferry residents pay a lot of taxes for our students to come to this school. And I would like to know what Dr. Haynes is doing to obtain this type of a salary. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Ms. Jenny Schmidt?
Jenny Schmidt, 138 Fifth Street.
Good evening.
Good evening. FP 146, I have a question. Is the retreat going to be open to the public or is it going to be recorded?
It will be open to the public.
Okay. And then why for this Tasmin Weisberger to come present, is it a not to exceed $1,000? When her presentation is about an hour, it's a slideshow. Little Ferry already saw the slideshow. I have a copy of the slideshow. It just seems a waste of money, if you ask me. And aside from that, for those of you who might not be so familiar with who she is or who Rutgers Answer is, I just wanted to read you their mission statement, their description of their organization. So they're a national organization that provides and promotes unfettered access to comprehensive sexuality education for young people and the adults who teach them. They believe in young people and they're dedicated to ensuring that young people have the knowledge and skills they need to be happy, healthy, and safe well into the future. This means they should be able to access age-appropriate and medically accurate information about sexuality directly and without interference. I personally find that the wording there a little alarming. Who's going to interfere with this access to the sexuality? And Answer knows that committed, caring adults play an integral role in supporting the health and well-being of young people. For more than 30 years, they've helped adults be the best sexuality educators they can be by providing the latest resources, the most current information, and the best practices for reaching and teaching the youth in their lives. Just wanted to give you the description in case you're not aware of who they are. And Miss Weisgerber is a former educator for Planned Parenthood. And Answer, who she works for now from Rutgers, they're also partners with amaze.org and Advocates for Youth, who promote the 3 R's curriculum, which I've shared with some of you, some samples of that curriculum. I understand that we don't have to adopt their curriculum. We can write our own and our own lessons. But just to give you a synopsis of who she is, what she's here to promote, and that we're going to spend up to $1,000 to have her give an hour presentation, I'd like you to vote no. I don't see the point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Ed DeSantis?
Hi, Ed DeSantis, 15 Homestead Place.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I thought my wife was first, so now I'm trying to find my place. So, excuse me a second. Brightly Event Manager at a cost of $6,348. They provide online event management. What exactly is this?
Actually, it's a platform where outside organizations can request facilities use. And we maintain a master calendar that way. And it should, because right now, it's very difficult to schedule the facilities use. And that's an initial cost for implementation, but moving forward, it won't be more than $4,000 a year. And it should really help to increase our efficiency. People will be able to request use online. We can approve online, and other districts use it. And apparently it's a fabulous service.
Who currently does it now?
We spoke with Hackensack, and they use it, and they have full videos on their website. And we're going to model our training videos according to the way Hackensack introduced their event management.
And internally, we have someone that does it now?
Yes, Stephanie Takich is doing that in conjunction with Tony Mazzarella, who is Buildings and Grounds Secretary.
Just seems like a lot of money to just have a calendar for events scheduled. And there's a lot of outside contracts on this agenda in general. P313, approval for contract. So far, Dr. Haynes has been renewed in 90-day increments. And now we have a renewal for an acting superintendent for an entire year. Did we get special permission for this? And actually, there's supposed to be a 30-day notice to citizens before implementing this so they can come and comment. That didn't happen. So why is it 1 year?
Mrs. Wright, if you can interject on this.
That's really not an attorney question. It's a simple question. Why is it a year? You're signing the contract.
It also involves personnel, right?
No, it's just why a 1-year contract? Hypothetically. You don't know, do you?
This isn't a Q&A. This is a comment section. Please make your comment.
My comment is it's $180,000 plus Dr. Bender's salary, plus the amount spent on legal fees. So what's happening here with this 1-year renewal is the board by majority, because there are those of you that have some common sense. And yes, that was kind of insulting, but I mean it. Is that we're spending over $400,000 a year to keep Dr. Bender out of the position. Where does fiscal responsibility go? Why wouldn't it be another 90 days? It just seems like another setup with the Board of Education. The resolution, which I don't have in front of me, and you're probably not going to comment on either, is why is there 3 board retreats? Do you need that much training? Or is it just a matter that you don't want to hear from the public all summer? You've got people to hire. Have you done anything about 7th and 8th grade coordinator? You're going to wait till the end of August to hire that position? I don't know what Dr. Haynes is doing. He's not even paying attention. He's the one that's got to hire him. What the hell are you doing? Somebody share the brain? Really? What the hell are you doing? I know you're smiling, you're not going to answer, but the thing is, it's very irresponsible. Will there be public comment at those meetings?
Yes, it will.
Will you be taking votes at those meetings?
No votes.
No votes. So you're not going to schedule any votes, personnel and otherwise, for any of the programs until the end of August?
August 24th, I believe.
Yeah. And you think that's an acceptable answer?
Mr. DeSantis, I'd ask you to look at P289, and I'll read it publicly. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the hiring of necessary personnel during the months of July and August 2022 to fill vacant positions for the 2022-2023 school year, with these appointments confirmed and approved by the board at the next regular board meeting.
So it's just a blanket resolution. There were some of you that if you vote for this should be ashamed of yourselves. But that would take a conscience.
Thank you for your comments.
Mrs. Susan DeSantis,
FI 337,
Name and address, please. Your name and address, please.
15 Homestead Place.
Good evening, miss.
FI 337. How much have we spent on attorney's fees up to this point?
I believe through March, no, actually through May, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $278,000.
$278,000. Okay, we have the attorney here. I'm going to say this again. Over $200 an hour. When Robert's Rules of Order costs about $4.99. This is ridiculous. This has never been done before. This is unnecessary. And I think that the board should stop the attorney from coming at every meeting to answer all of your questions. P 313. Where is the contract? There's no contract put out to the public. You're going to approve it without the public even seeing the contract. It's not in the attachments. And where is the 30-day hearing in advance public hearing? Would you please answer my question?
I'll ask our attorney if you'll get a copy, if the public will get a copy.
The public is supposed to get a copy before a vote.
Okay.
And there's supposed to be a 30-day public hearing like there was the last time. Where is the hearing?
Ms. Red, if you could please answer this question.
Sure. The public is entitled to a copy of the acting superintendent's contract. That should be provided to the public, absolutely. As far as the public hearing is required when the board renegotiates, extends, amends, or alters the term of a contract. This is a new contract for the upcoming year. So for whatever reason, the legislature requires the public hearing and the notice for basically if you are revising or amending a contract, but not for a new contract.
So you're saying this is exactly the same contract that there was a public hearing for 3 months ago?
No, this is a new contract for a
Then
new
where
school
is
year.
the public hearing on the new contract?
There's no requirement by law to have a public hearing on a new contract.
But it's changed.
It is different from his old contract. It is a new contract for the upcoming school year.
And the terms in the contract have changed, right?
Changed from the contract from last year.
From 3 months ago when you had the public hearing. Nothing's changed in the contract?
It substantively, no. The contract is the same. There's maybe 2 small revisions to the contract, if I recall correctly.
So there's revisions and the public has no access to it and
No,
they're
the
going to vote on
public-
it tonight.
The public has the right to access that contract. You are correct.
Okay, where is it? We don't have access to it.
I can't answer that question for you, but I can tell you that the public is entitled to see the contract.
So where's the contract?
We'll post it online for you.
You're supposed to post it before you vote, not after you vote. And as to the contract, I think that the public, the parents have made it pretty clear that they really don't have any confidence in Dr. Haynes to do this job. We have an exorbitant amount of people leaving the district. They're unhappy. We have unhappy administrators. We have unhappy teachers. So why would you continue this? And why would you do it for a year? And what happens if the board changes and Dr. Bender comes back, because obviously you won't bring her back. You'll just throw money away for nothing. So what happens at that point? You have to buy the contract out?
Can answer that, President Fernandez. The contract has a provision in there that upon the appointment of a new superintendent or the return of Dr. Bender, that the contract is null and void. There's no buyout provision in it because it's an acting superintendent contract.
Well, thank you for that, Kerry. Again, I will say this board needs to bring the Dr. Bender back, needs to settle her lawsuit, move this district forward for every child in this district who's suffering for this. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. John Raftery.
John Raftery, 54 Euclid Avenue, Ridgefield Park, New Jersey.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening. On this FI 148 job description for the athletic volunteer of quality control and equipment manager, that was the same title as last year, I believe. I'd like the people of Ridgefield Park to understand the following. The state guidelines call for members of the Board of Ed not to be volunteer coaches based on too much interaction and with the students and parents. In the wisdom, our board has gone outside of the guidelines and voted to allow Mr. Gibbons to coach football again. This decision is not in the best interest of the students or the taxpayers of Ridgefield Park. It is in the best interest of Mr. Gibbons and no one else. A perfect example was the cancellation of the 2020 football season by Dr. Bender. Based on medical advice from the county's top physician. Dr. Bender looked at what was best for the children and the students and canceled the remaining football season and immediately had a war on her hand with the Board of Education, led personally by Mr. Gibbons. Last season, Mr. Gibbons' title was said to be quality control, the same as now, dealing with equipment only and not the students. Last summer, Mr. Gibbons was taped clearly, coaching players and responded by making false allegations to all the ethics claims against him. Mr. Sadler was not mentally right. Ms. Ramos' husband followed him home in his car. Mr. Gibbons also accused a board member, an outstanding board member, of coordinating the whole thing, causing chaos on the Board of Education and within our school system. The point is, Mr. Gibbons has no right bringing the Board of Education into this quarrel. Mr. Gibbons has no right bringing the town into this. Mr. Gibbons has a simple decision to make. Does he want to be a football coach or serve on the Board of Ed? His actions have cost the town thousands of dollars in attorney's fees and so much wasted times at meetings that should be applied to what is best for our students. I am asking the board to consider this and take the appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The decision should be Mr. Gibbons and no one else's.
Thank you for your comments.
We're going to move to online comments now.
Nancy, do we have any? Thank you so much. Good evening, miss.
Good evening. Valerie Ferraro, 436 Teaneck Road. I'm speaking about Resolution 337 about the legal fees. I understand it's only a small part of the expenditure, but I do not understand why the board feels it necessary to have the attorney at every meeting. I know most of you were not there at the time, so you don't realize, but every board has difficult times. As I say, none of you were there at the time, but I'm sure Mr. Cathcart remembers it very well when we had a superintendent who unfortunately passed away suddenly and we were left without a superintendent. At that time, we were reopening Lincoln School for the first time in years. So we were trying to renovate a building, staff it, do all of this without a superintendent. Yet somehow we managed to have our meetings without a board attorney to help us. So as I say, you may have difficult times, but every board does. So I don't understand why, to me, it is such a waste of money. And it's nothing personal against the board attorney who is present, but it's just the idea that you cannot police yourselves. All it takes is Robert's rules. It's very simple. So I don't understand why you continue and insist upon having an attorney present at every meeting, particularly when the legal expenses are through the roof. To me, every dollar you spend for a lawyer is a dollar that you take away from students. So I really wish the board would consider going forward that they do not need an attorney at every meeting. That money can be spent elsewhere and should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valerie. Good evening.
Good evening. Heather Coleman Otuyalu, 27 Gordon Street. I have a question about P289. Can you explain to me how personnel is going to be hired in July and August before officially being confirmed? How is that supposed to work? Will the public have a chance to speak? Hello.
Sure. So I'll echo what I said at the last board meeting. The hiring process includes the administrators who are hiring for the position to call a committee together. They go through an interview process. Usually that's 1 or 2 times. They may ask the candidate to do lessons or other things. Once they want to promote a candidate or more than one candidate, that comes to my attention, at which point I start bringing the candidate's attention to Mr. Demikoff. The two of us get together, we review the salaries, we review the resumes, and make a determination if that should be go to the board and be board approved. So it's the same process in the summertime as we're engaged in now.
And who selects the committees? Is there a process for that, for the personnel committees?
The local building administrators do, yes.
Okay. I also have a question about P307 and P313. And again, this is no personal attack or anything to do with Dr. Haynes himself, but are we paying 2 salaries? Is he getting a salary for the curriculum position that he was hired for originally, and also the acting superintendent salary?
Yes, I believe he's receiving a salary and then a stipend for being the acting superintendent.
So in the agenda, it doesn't say a stipend, it says the salary of 180.
I believe the difference is what the stipend is that's included in the salary.
Okay, so it won't be 2 salaries.
No, ma'am, that is what we'll be paying.
Okay. And then I guess the other question I have is, will there be more information on, well, I guess this is actually off agenda, but I just wanted to mention was what he's thinking about hiring. Will there be more information about the middle school position?
Yes, that's being Mrs. Cavens, who has already promised the board that she will be presenting a plan with her administrative team. The board will hear a preliminary presentation over the summer retreats, and then she will be presenting that at the August Board of Education meeting.
So this person who will be the point person for the middle school will be put in place before September,
Yes.
and the public will have the opportunity to comment and ask questions on that.
We can build that into a retreat. That would be fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Miss. Good evening, Miss.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. This is Sharon Ramirez, 205 Overpeck Avenue. I just have a few questions regarding the salary for the superintendent. One of the things that really concerns me as a taxpayer, 180,000 is more than some of the superintendents in New York City make. And superintendents in New York City are in charge of a small district is about 13 schools. And in our district, we have 3 grammar schools, a middle school, and a high school that we're trying to make as one thing. And we're going to pay 180,000 for a superintendent in charge of a fraction of what New York City would be cost. And as far as what we've been seeing over the past year, we're just not confident in what Dr. Haynes has done throughout his tenure in just the 1 year as superintendent. I'm not speaking him as a curriculum supervisor or curriculum director. I'm speaking as far as superintendent. We're just not confident in what he has done as a community, and you've heard it time and time again. So voting for this, you're going against everything that the community, the taxpayers, the people who are sending kids to the school, are just against. Specifically, some of the things that have been brought up at this meeting. P289 that the last person was just talking about. I mean, this is very scary that we are just giving, there'll be no public knowledge. I mean, how dangerous is that we're just we're just giving somebody the power just to hire people in our district, spend our taxpayer money. I mean, this is just, and a 7th grade, we're gonna have to put somebody in charge of the 7th and 8th grade when we can't just keep Miss Diane Thiemann in charge. We're gonna put her, I don't know where we're putting her. We're putting her in charge of a program of with how many kids that's already in the grammar schools where they have principals in charge of that. I mean, this to me is insane to me. And we're gonna pay Dr. Haynes $180,000 plus Dr. Bender, who's already getting her salary because of her contract and whatever legal fees. I mean, this is just ridiculous. If this vote goes through. And it's upsetting that September through June, the public will get to speak on the hiring, but in July and August, we're not going to have any say in that. I mean, this is really absolutely ridiculous. I mean, P289 and P313, I mean, should be voted down. I mean, vehemently, we as a community, we as the people of Ridgefield Park and Little Ferry object to Dr. Haynes being hired, to object to hiring of anybody being appointed during the months where the community would have no say. And as far as the 130% over legal fees, I mean, that's scary. And it's going to be more because of what we're doing as not so much as a board, but with our board and with the state monitor. I mean, this is just ridiculous. We're just paying for legal fees. My taxes are not paying for my students, I mean, my children to have an education. We're paying for legal fees because we're just doing, not correct practices in hiring and removing people. The community wants to keep Miss Diane Thiemann. The community is happy with Miss Diane Thiemann. We are putting her where she doesn't belong is not appropriate. Giving Dr. Haynes the amount of money that is a superintendent, more than a superintendent in New York City would make, is absolutely ridiculous. And I really hope that the board listens to the community tonight, listens to all the people. You've listened to us before. Most of you have listened to us before, and I appreciate that. And I thank you for that. I'm really upset with the state monitor and his decisions that he has made. And I really hope that the board continues to listen to us and votes correctly tonight. And once again, I do appreciate all the volunteers and everything, all the time that you have put into this. I know you're taking a lot of abuse, but you really need to listen to us. And this is what the community wants. This is what the students want. This is what the taxpayers want. And we don't want Dr. Haynes. We want you to please vote down. Please vehemently vote down P289 and P313. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
President Fernandez, may I just make a quick statement? I want to make sure that the board understands something.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I want to make sure the board understands in passing that resolution, which many districts do, but it's entirely up to the board. Basically, what you're doing is allowing the onboarding process to start and to secure someone's understanding that they're going to be hired. So a lot of times folks will not give their notice until they know for certain that they're the selected candidate. The board will be required, though, to approve all of the personnel who are approved or recommended by the fiscal monitor and by the superintendent. They're starting this process. They're giving them an offer, but they should not start in the schools until they are approved by the Board of Education. So that is a process that you should follow.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. And
Welcome.
to answer some of the questions that came from public comment, I do want to reinforce that we have 3 summer retreats. They are July 14th, July 28th, August 27th. And to some of the questions, yes, we will have Tasmin Weisberger from the Rutgers group to go ahead and present the comprehensive health and physical education. That came from numerous requests from the Board of Education who wanted to be more engaged and educated on this topic. And it came from our public too. So unlike many other districts that went ahead and did this presentation in closed executive session, we are opening this up to the public. Those 3 public sessions do allow for public comment. They are open public meetings. We will take no action. But that gives our community the opportunity also to come and ask questions about the comprehensive health and phys ed, which this board thought was important to educate the public and to make us aware before we moved into the new school year. Likewise, for the July and August meetings, those will be with Judy Wilson. One of those meetings will be setting on the strategic goals, which are already underway, the top 3 district goals, discussions on the status and the progress and moving those agendas and actions forward. And the second meeting will be on board goals, which I, for one, am really excited about because I have not heard of this board engaging in board goals, which are self-governing goals on improvement, in quite some time. So I'd invite the public to come to those. They are open. You can ask questions. You can be educated like the rest of us.
Moving on to resolutions, faculties and programs. Will Trustee Rodriguez please move them?
I so move FP 141 through FP 146.
Second.
Are there any questions on FP 141 through FP 146?
Just one comment on FP 141. Just to state that at the last board meeting, we had to approve at the last minute half days for the end of the school year. And I just wanted to be noted that was, I'd like to personally apologize. We shouldn't have done that at the end of the year. And we've corrected that already for next year so that they are built into the calendar and that everybody knows to make appropriate childcare arrangements.
And if I can, I want to make a comment on 146. This is new on that the governor approved. Drawn any change in curriculum, we need to involve the parents in the community with any changes in this curriculum, because it is controversial.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just like to encourage all the parents to please attend this retreat. Please bring your questions, please. The more support you have on this, the better it will be prepared for this retreat. Thank you.
Carrie, I
just
do
like
have
to
just
say-
one other comment on the calendar because I found it really odd. So I looked it up and I don't know if any of the parents here do. Juneteenth is June 19th, but the state recognizes it as the third Friday in June, which is why we're going with June 16th.
Just quick comment. I'd like to say thank you to all schools for FB 143. Also in regards to FB 146, I am very much looking forward to learning as much as I can about this new curriculum, and I'd love to hear what they have to say.
George? Dr. Haynes, will that board retreat be recorded and available?
So we recorded Judy Wilson's retreats last year. They're available. They're up online. I don't see why we wouldn't do the same with those. I have not asked for permission for Tasmin Weisgerber or, for copyright reasons or anything. I will reach out to her and ask her. While I have the mic, Bernard, thank you for the all school special needs, because that's a huge shout out. $20,000 from that organization to our school to help the special needs students is huge. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll take the roll call. Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes, but I'm an abstention for FP 145 and FP 146.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes, and a big thank you goes out to the all school special needs. Thank you.
Motions pass.
Moving on to finance and insurance, Trustee Gomes.
I so move FI 309 to FI 337.
Do we have a second? Are there any questions on FI 309 to FI 337?
Yes, I have a quick
I-
comment.
I have a question on FI 314, the corrective action plan. I'm wondering if there were specific instances that were pointed out where we failed as a board.
This was the certification of implementation for the audit, the annual audit, and we only had one finding, which was to write off stale checks. So we implemented that, and that's why I was able to submit the certification of implementation.
I have two comments on the FI resolutions. The first is somewhat generally, I'd like to commend Ms. Grabstein for some of the software upgrades that we're doing in the central office. I think they will help bring us into the modern day and age in terms of running the business office and be able to devote our staff to doing things that have more of a direct benefit to our students than to, some of the administrative tasks. The second thing that I would just like to point out, because the legal costs, I agree with the public that we do have to get our hands around the legal costs. Based on the numbers that Ms. Grabstein and Mr. Demikoff gave us, the vendor litigation is about 30% of what we've been spending. So unfortunately, because of prior action, we likely will continue to spend very heavily in legal fees for that litigation. But I'd like to see if we can take some sort of measure to look at what else we've been spending the other 70% on and see if there's anything we can do to improve that.
And just quickly, I want to thank the memories of Mr. Schalk, Ms. Kasakian, and Mr. Walsh for their generous scholarships as well.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused about FI 314. I'm looking at the attachments that were sent to us. And there's a letter here that shows 3 areas.
You know what, then that's an error. That shouldn't be there. It was from the state audit, the follow-up to the state audit. And yeah, I think that, I don't know that that attachment should be there. So I'm going to have to make the correction online.
Ms. Grabstein? No.
Does that, I guess, does that belong someplace else? Will we vote on this another? Just because I am curious about the attachment.
I think if you want to table it, I think when we get to that point, Ms. Trustee Orth, we certainly can go that route. I believe this was just notifying the state of the corrective action that Mrs. Grabstein took for the recommendations given by our auditors.
Right, and so I'm looking at the letter that shows 3 things that she's doing, and one of them says that there will be continued, hold on. The district will provide the board with ongoing training to remind them of their responsibilities with regard to governing the school district. So I'm curious.
Yes, Mrs. Orth, that attachment should not have been posted. That was posted in error. I apologize.
Continuing with our comments at this time.
Are there any other comments on FI 309 to FI 337?
I have just a general comment about the number of consultants and the number of new systems that we're implementing. I've been asking on a regular basis, and I've been told, one, that this was an area of neglect for many, many years. You know, we know that our buildings were neglected for many years, but our systems were also neglected for many years. Starting with a couple of years ago when we were, you know, how we did looking for substitute teachers, a lot of personnel issues, payroll. And so I've looked at some of these, and I as I said, I Google these things, and have been told that these are necessary because they hadn't been updated in many, many years. So I know there's a lot of them, but that's how far behind we were.
Any other comments? Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, but there'll be an abstention on 309.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes to all the, yes to everything except for those that I have to abstain from.
Mr. Gay,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes.
Motion's pass.
Consent agenda. Would Trustee Orth, please?
So move consent agenda CR 39.
Second.
I just wanted to reiterate again that the June board meeting is actually June 14th next year, not June 15th. Are there any questions on CR 39? Seeing none, Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Moving on to personnel with trustee Gibbons.
Yes, thank you. I so move P 289 to P 315.
Second.
Are there any questions on P 289 to P 315?
I have a comment again, just in the interest of transparency on P 313, the acting superintendent. We do have to have a superintendent in place. An acting superintendent comes from the ranks of our district. And I do believe it's important that we try to have some measure of continuity in the district. And Dr. Haynes has the input from the board on what we are looking to accomplish. And I think the board retreats will also help us get there.
Yes. I want to make a comment regarding 313. I want the public to realize that this is contingent on this board finding a permanent superintendent for the future. So I want to make that very clear.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes, but I'm an abstention on P 304.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
abstention on 310 to 312.
Yes, of course.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, but I'll be an abstention on 313 and P 306.
and President Fernandez.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
At this time, I'd like to move on to citizens' comments off agenda items.
Janet Malou,
Good evening, miss. How are you?
Just a fast comment, as much as I understand, I can't believe we have nobody in district that can take this position, but that's another point. At the last meeting, I questioned, when are we doing a superintendent search, since it's very obvious you have no intention of bringing back Dr. Bender? I have yet to heard anything on it, which I will repeat. In my experience, in a lot of years in school politics, it's just really driving home the point that it's very, very likely that next year we will be sitting here and we will be, or you will be approving, or whoever's sitting there, unless we get drastic change on this board, will be approving Dr. Haynes for this position that I don't feel he's qualified for. Having said that, I've been questioning the junior high or middle school program. And I was told last week that it was all in the superintendent's report. The superintendent's report does not give any detail. My question is, are they going to be in on a different schedule? Who is their go-to person? You talk about a 7th and 8th guidance counselor. Typically, the guidance counselors are concerned with the academics. They're not available on a regular basis. Who's dealing with discipline? Who's dealing with, you talk about a social worker, but that social worker is not dedicated to 7-8. Who is really dedicated to 7-8? What's the program really going to look like? Because as I've stated before, a junior high and a middle school are two different philosophies. You talk about all these people that you're bringing in to speak. Have you thought of bringing in some specialists or visitations to schools that have true middle schools? No, because you're going to do the same old thing. And these 7th and 8th graders are going to flounder. And so moving forward, please call it a junior high and not a middle school, because what you're talking about is not a middle school. And I've seen no indication. Again, you're going to wait till the end of August. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's going to be something that comes out about what's happening with these kids. And it's going to be too late for any parent or person from the community to have any say about it, because we're back to that again. Everything is last minute in this district. And then when it gets to this point and you hear the public complaining and saying, we're going in the wrong direction. Oh, well, we don't have any time now. 90 days was all that was needed for you guys in the past 90 days and the 90 days before that, as people have been complaining, to look within for somebody else to take this place. The strategic goals that they're talking about, you've been talking about. I sat at that meeting a few months ago and I said, we are coming off a pandemic. We have kids that have social, emotional, and educational needs, and we're worried about a 5-year overarching plan. Makes no sense. You should have been saying, okay, we'll look at that. But right now, what are we doing for these kids right now? Seems to me the answer was, oh, we're not giving finals this year. What did that accomplish? Do you actually know what these kids have learned? No. Do you know what they retained for the year? No. So now you're going to take them, put them into classes next year, and the teacher is the one that's going to get stuck holding the bag when these kids don't know what they're doing. How is that educationally sound? The only reason you don't give finals is so nobody has to be held accountable. And honestly, as an educator, I am so frustrated with this district that I can't even put it into words anymore. I really, really can't. And I don't know what you're thinking, but it's not where you should be thinking. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Leslie Gottlieb.
Gum on my dress. Leslie Gottlieb, 464A Liberty Street, apartment 102, Little Ferry.
Good evening.
Okay, I have never stopped talking about and promoting the early college experience because my son Alan had a wonderful time in it. And recently an issue came up and I followed the chain of command. I reached out to Ms. Hass after my son did everything in his best efforts. I reached out to Ms. Hasselberger, and then I reached out, I had corresponded with Ms. Cavins, who unfortunately has been under the weather, so I don't know how much she has been able to look into it. And I even reached out to you, Dr. Haynes. I sent you an email. But the situation that has arisen, my son was in the very first cohort. And in 2020, before COVID, they had a problem with a language class. They weren't able to schedule one in. They were discontinuing sign language. So something was arranged between Bergen Community College and Ridgefield Park to count my son's second year Spanish as a Spanish class at Bergen. He was able to graduate Bergen with a full degree and a full credit with whatever language requirement that happened. However, in transferring all of his credits from Bergen to Montclair, Bergen says, you didn't pay anything for this credit, we won't give it. And we have never received, we, to our best recollection, never paid for the credit. So that's where we are. We're trying to find out why we can't get the Spanish transferred over. And there seems to, we've tried emailing all the way to the top at Bergen. My son did, and I'm just stepping in at this point because I think the issue is between Ridgefield Park and Bergen, and maybe different people are running things now. So if someone can look into it and talk to the people with the early college, so hopefully we can get this resolved. Even if there's payment involved, so they can get the credit and not have to take the language at Montclair. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much for your comments.
Jennifer Louisi.
Good evening, Miss.
Hi, Jennifer Leuzzi, 3 Monette Street, Little Ferry. Dr. Haynes, exactly what have you done to embrace the community of Little Ferry? Sure. Thank you. Dr. Haynes, what exactly have you done to embrace the community of Little Ferry? And what have you done to bridge the divide between the communities? How are you effectively doing superintendent and curriculum position? Why am I hearing that some of my daughter's favorite teachers are quitting and others are openly interviewing elsewhere? What are you doing to retain the teacher loss that is all of a sudden happening in this district? How do you answer your lack of response to emails? Because both the communities of Ridgefield Park and Little Ferry do not understand why we cannot get answers to any of our questions. Many families and community members are outraged by your poor unresponsiveness. Administrators have always been held to a 24-hour response time. Why is this no longer the practice? I've never, ever had this issue with Eric Koenig. As a taxpayer, parent, and alumni of RPHS, I have been watching these meetings closely, and it seems to me the kids are the ones paying the price for your inexperience and inability to do this job, to lead the communities of Ridgefield Park and Little Ferry. It sounds like the children of Little Ferry and Ridgefield Park are getting screwed over due to the fact that you have aligned with State Monitor. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Jenny Schmidt.
Good evening.
Good evening again. Okay. I wanted to add something. So I know you guys are very excited about what you might learn about the sex ed curriculum at your retreat. But just wanted to make mention that you'll only learn what you're going to be presented with. And this person, Tasmin, is going to be very careful at letting you know all the wonderful things about the new sex ed curriculum. She's going to give you a lot of cherry pick statistics about it. And give you what you want to hear so that you think it's a great thing. She's going to leave out the other stuff. A lot of that I shared with you already, but good thing I'll be there, I guess, so I can make sure to ask the right questions. I'm just going to say some more about the sex ed and my opinion on it, even though I will be at the retreat and I'll be sure to ask my questions and share my views there. But while I have you, I'm of the opinion that the sexuality classes don't belong in K through 2nd grade, period. Sex is only one of many difficult topics that come up with children, yet schools don't require teachers to touch on these other topics. Another parent in New Jersey, she made a good example, she's going through cancer right now, and she has young children, kindergarten and 2nd grade. And we're not talking about, what it's going to be like to lose their mom when she dies of cancer. That's a tough topic. Maybe some kids aren't ready for it, maybe some are, but teachers aren't the people to sit them down and have those conversations. Where does it end? I think parents can handle their kindergarten through 2nd graders and any questions that might come up. And if they can't, I suggest we do help those parents, the parents. I think that the school can send out flyers. I think you can have meetings. I think you should engage the parents and teach those parents that are having difficulty how to better address those difficult questions that they may have trouble with. I think that's the answer. I understand that a lot of it is out of your control. I don't believe we should hand it over to teachers to explain private body parts to a kindergartner. And I do appreciate the opt-out, but it's not a solution when every single year I'm going to have to check back and see what the new lessons are that a particular teacher wants to implement. They can change the lessons at any time. The state standards are the state standards. How we teach it is a different story. So I'm forced every year to see what's my kid going to learn this time? What do I have to opt out of? It's a lot of work. So opting out, not the best solution, in my opinion. Lastly, I just want to stress the age appropriateness topic. I'm not so much bothered by what's being taught as much as when it's being taught and who's teaching it. Again, I went to Ridgefield Park High School. Half the teachers here I went to school with. I don't know if I want a 30-something-year-old gym teacher teaching my 12-year-old daughter about her body parts in front of a class full of boys and girls. It doesn't make sense. It's not right. Opting out, what's that going to do? I mean, what's that going to do for a 12-year-old girl to opt out and be alone and while all her friends are in a class learning these things? And again, I don't want to vet these teachers and whether I'm comfortable with certain teachers teaching certain things. It's just going beyond what they need to be taught and what's appropriate in school. And to give another example of what occurred back in February with my daughter, who's special needs kindergarten, she came home one day and she was extremely upset. She was excited at first, okay? She had this puppet in her hand, and every week they were learning about a new president, and she was so excited to show me her puppet of her new president and what she learned about that president. So she comes home and says, "Look, Mom, it's Abraham Lincoln." And I said, "Oh, that's great, Reagan. What did Abraham Lincoln do?" She immediately got depressed, frowned, very quietly said, "He killed all the people with the dark skin." I'm stunned. I immediately email her teacher to find out. She was taught about Abraham Lincoln that day. Same week, she's being taught about Martin Luther King, and they watch a video about Martin Luther King. She's, again, special needs kindergarten. She's confused. She jumbles the stories. She gets that Abraham Lincoln killed the people with the dark skin, and she's really upset about it. Number one, it's not factual. And this is how kids confuse things at that age. They're 5. They're not ready for this. They're not ready to be taught. I never have told her about anybody killing anybody. Never mind about your dark skin or your white, whatever. I've never. Where are we going to draw the line? It's not her teacher's fault. I immediately asked the teacher so I could understand exactly what she was taught. And the teacher explained to me that it was a movie they watched about Martin Luther King, and that the message was a beautiful message about treating everybody the same, regardless of how they look. Somehow killing was involved. Killing people with dark skin was involved. And that might be factual. It happened. I get it. It doesn't belong in special needs kindergarten 5-year-old class. I was very upset about that. I kept it to myself for a long time, but it's the same thing with sex ed. The exact same thing.
Thank you for your
You're
comments.
robbing parents of their
Thank you.
job. Let them do their job. Help the ones that need help.
Thank you for your comments.
Ed DeSantis.
This stands as 15 Homestead Place.
Good evening,
Just
sir.
good evening. Just a couple of things. I'm disappointed the resolution 313 passed, but I acknowledge, I understand what you were saying, Mrs. McNeil. And it comes down to the wire, and you have to have an acting superintendent. I don't think you had to have it for a year. And I don't trust the majority of the board as to the reasoning behind it, especially when you won't answer. On to other things, I would like there be clarity on voting on personnel going forward. For years, we've been told we're a 10-member board, 6 people were needed to pass personnel, whether 10 could vote or 10 couldn't, regardless of abstentions, conflicts, or the Little Ferry representative. It's got to come down to a formal opinion. it can't be, well, it's going to be, if it's 5 and a 9-member board on elementary, or it's 6 and it's 10-member board on high school, but something's got to be decided. It seems to be moving with every way the wind blows. And everything, as I remember being told, the board has 10 members and you still need 6 for personnel. If that's changed and there's something to document that, I would certainly like to have that come across. I hope these sessions this summer really result in something. It seems last year's retreats had a lot of fancy buzzwords and a lot of flash and things on screen, but really nothing really happened during the year to change curriculum really at all. And for all the other things we have to do, this is still a priority. And we've got enough people handling curriculum. We probably could handle curriculum numbers-wise for Patterson. Because so many people jumping in to help with that job. I don't know what the board's going to do going forward in this next year. You don't have 7th and 8th grade principal. You're going to end up deciding this last minute again. Why wasn't this done? If you thought you're going this direction, why wasn't it done 90 days ago, 100 days ago, 6 months ago? The board's job, and I don't mean to lecture, is the long-range plan. And yet we're voting on spur-of-the-moment things. We change policies. Policies shouldn't change every meeting. Policies are long-term. They're not short-term. Exceptions. If everything is short-term, what are the rules? What are the parameters? Kids need parameters. Staff need parameters. The public needs parameters. So I ask that this next year going forward, that something changes. It's your responsibility. And I really hope to God something changes and we get on the right track.
Thank you for your comments.
Susan DeSantis.
Homestead Place. Mr. Demakoff, I understand that we're in litigation with Little Ferry over the money they owe us. Could you tell me at what stage that litigation is?
That's being handled by the board attorney, and I know that paperwork was filed back and forth. I can only ask Ms. Wright to update you because I don't have the latest information on that. I know that we're at a standstill basically at this point. I don't know what the time frame is for any response back from the individual or individuals that will be making this decision.
I can provide a brief update. We have a court appearance scheduled, I believe, for middle or late of July. We are working with Little Ferry's attorney to exchange what we call paper discovery. So we're going back and forth with documentation at this point in time. And then sometime in July or August, I expect we will either proceed with motions to see if we can dispose of the case without a hearing, or we will get a hearing date from the judge.
So you're in discovery right now?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Raftery.
Hey, good evening, sir.
John Raftery, 54 Euclid Avenue, Ridgefield Park. A couple of quick comments for Dr. Haynes. 2 months ago at a meeting, you told us we would have a professional from Rutgers to come in to an open meeting and go over the new curriculum. Is there anything going on with that?
I'm going to answer all the questions at the end of public comment.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to answer all of these questions at the end of public comment.
Okay, very good. I hope you heard my statements on Mr. Gibbons and what's gone over the last year. And I'm wondering, how is it that you could possibly suggest him for the same position again? It's stated that is suggested by the superintendent of schools. And last but not least, I don't know where to start with Ms. Thiemann. Effective, I guess, next week, we have made the decision that the taxpayers will pay her approximately $60,000, somewhere in that area, to the end of December to fill a position that does not exist for a program that does not exist in a building that does not exist for a program that does not exist. That is the taxpayers' money you are spending so freely. At the end of the 3 months, there is no way we'll have free daycare up and running anyway. So Ms. Thiemann's position is either going to have to be eliminated, and then you're going to have to make another move with her. So I'd just like to know where you're going with the whole thing, because I just don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please promote Nancy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ani Malul, 163 East Grand Avenue.
Good evening.
How are you? So this is the first board meeting I have attended in a very long time. I am a product of the Ridgefield Park School Systems. I am a graduate of 2006. So I only have 5 minutes, so there's a lot to touch on. So I quickly Googled Tasmin Weisberger, and I'm on her website right now, and I'm looking at the glossary of sex education terms. And many of you that are sitting on the board, I went to school with. Some of you were a few years older than me, and I think we all remember Ms. Boylan's sex education class. And it seems like her education is missing a bunch of words like penis, scrotum, testes, fallopian tube, ovaries, like the actual conception of sex and how a baby's made. Instead, her terms have things like anal sex, which she defines as sexual behavior involving penetration of the anus by a penis or sex toy. And then her glossary also goes into power, which is defined as access to resources, social power that enhances one's chances of living a relatively more comfortable, productive, and safe life. Wealth, whiteness, citizenship, patriarchy, heterosexualism, and education are a few key social mechanisms through which power operates. And I'm just sitting here completely mind blown, because the reason why I loved growing up in the school system was that it was a melting pot of everyone. We didn't have this weird power terms. And I just feel like this curriculum is very woke. So how are we going to make sure that we are teaching kids actually how a baby is conceived? Is that just disappearing now? Will that change into the biology curriculum? I mean, I know Ms. Lagatol taught me that females have X chromosomes and males have Ys. And it seems that Ms. Tasmin's glossary has a whole bunch of different genders. So will the biology curriculum also be changing with this? No?
Sure, I'll answer some of those questions at the end of public comment.
Okay, absolutely. And I just kind of want to thank everyone. This meeting actually was very eye-opening, and I look forward to seeing you all July 14th. That's it.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Hi, Gillian Mark, 305 Fifth Street.
Good evening, miss.
Yes, I'd like to, first of all, thank Bernard for bringing up all school special needs. It's sad that he was the only one who brought them up, because they've basically been funding the special needs program in Ridgefield Park for a decade. And no one has really thanked them on this board in the past few years. I know last year an award was given to, I'm don't know, some newbies in town for fundraising for the football team, which was really pathetic. Since All School Special Needs provides iPads, smart boards, class trips, basically everything for the special needs classrooms in Ridgefield Park. And the district doesn't provide much of anything. So Bernard, thank you for pointing that out, how much Bobby Lee does for our children in our district since the school doesn't.
You're welcome.
And only a special needs parent would understand how important that is. And the rest of you, shame on you, really, for not noticing how much All School Special Needs does. And I really can't wait for November. Thank you.
Moving on to unfinished business. Not seeing any unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Faculties and programs. Would Trustee Rodriguez please move them?
I so move FP 147 and FP 148.
Second.
Are there any questions on FP 147 and FP 148? Seeing none, Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes to 147, no to 148.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, but I think we need to add into 148 cannot handle any funds. Cannot handle any funds.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
I'm a yes to 147 and I'm an abstention to 148. Thank you.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
I'm going to be a yes to both. I just want to explain that, Mr. Cathcart, for 148, there is an item, there's a line in there that says that the individual will not handle monies, program monies. So I'm a yes to both.
okay, Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Moving on to finance and insurance. Trustee Gomes.
I so move FI 338, FI 341.
Second.
Are there any questions on FI 338 to FI 341? Seeing none, Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes. Moving on to personnel. Trustee Gibbons.
I so move P 316 to P 323. I'm sorry.
Do we have a second? Are there any questions on P 316 to P 323?
I have a question on 318. We're approving another $40,000 for curriculum writing over the summer. That's over 850 hours of curriculum writing.
Right, so I put not to exceed. I could have lowered that. It seems that throughout the year, I keep having to raise some of that. So I don't see this being used up over the summer. You're welcome to reduce that to 15,000 if you'd like. That's what's in the curriculum account. And this is what is needed to do things like the comprehensive health and phys ed education. Some of our new electives in ELA, we're going to head and create common assessments for our Algebra 1 students because we haven't had common assessments in this district. So if you want to go ahead and amend that and reduce that amount, that's fine. We'll come back in another 6 months and I'll put in another resolution.
I have a general question on the additional funds for curriculum writing. If we had dedicated director of curriculum and a dedicated superintendent, what would be the expectation of how much we should be paying for curriculum writing, supplementing those positions?
So it would be the same. When I held one job as director of curriculum instruction, there was a line item in the budget. I believe it's $60,000 per year for teachers to update and rewrite curriculum. As we headed into CUSAC this past year, as most of our curriculum had not been revised since 2014, we took care of revising as much as we could. Even today, I had to work a little bit on CUSAC curriculum writing. It continues. It's not a static, we write this curriculum and we're done. It's every time the state changes new standards, such as recently they've updated ELA, the comprehensive health and phys ed. There are about 6 different standards that have been updated for 2021 and 2022. So to your question, it would have been the same amount because the director of curriculum instruction doesn't necessarily get involved in the specific daily tasks of writing curriculum. That is delegated out to both principals, supervisors, K-12, and the teachers who are teaching the curriculum.
So I'm sorry, Doc, is this 40,000 then part of the 60,000 that, I mean, is that what we budget for is
Yes,
60?
exactly.
And this, you're just saying 40.
I'm just saying, I could have said 20. I don't expect it to be that large, but I've learned if I put in a resolution that if we had gone over 15 or 20, I'd be back here in 6 months and having to do it again, which is fine, which is I think appropriate.
No, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Phytros, with
Yes.
abstention on 322.
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mrs. McNeil,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Orth,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
and President Fernandez.
Yes.
Motion's pass.
At this time,
George, George, can I just sneak one thing in? I missed it during comments.
sure.
I just want to recognize there, I was at the 4th of July committee meeting on Monday. And unfortunately, I didn't write down their names, but I witnessed 2 of our high school students that were recognized for program art. The front cover winner and the second page winner, their families were there to support them. And it was great to see it. I spoke to one of the parents who had very positive things to say about our art department. And I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you for those comments. That cover is very nice, by the way, and the middle one. Okay, I'd like to take this time to have Barry finish those responses to everybody's off agenda items.
So first of all, I did want to go through and remind everybody about the new personal agenda items because that is a lot of teachers working in those summer academies over the summer, but also going on to improve our school district by curriculum revisions and writing and getting together in small cooperative learning groups and receiving professional development throughout the months of July and August. I think I speak for the board that we are pretty proud that we have those professionals committed to both the academies, the curriculums, the enrichment programs that we're running for kids throughout the summer and preparing for the new school year. So as we think about the new school year, there were a couple of questions in there, such as the strategic plan and strategic goals. I do feel fortunate that I've worked in central office in different school districts over the past 20 years. And I've had the opportunity to see when a superintendent works well with a board and they create strategic goals and when they don't work so well. and strategic goals are not as effective. And I'm proud to bring Judy Wilson back to work with our board on strategic goals as we did last year. For example, out of those strategic goals last year, talking about social and emotional learning and thinking what our students really do need, one of the huge goals that we've worked on all year was District Goal 1. That was all students known, included, cared for, and evolving in their self-awareness, identity, and agency. That was to build PK systems of support, instruction, and student opportunities that ensure that all children are known, included, and cared for, and that guide all children as they develop their self-awareness, identity, and sense of agency. I know members of this board actually attended a lot of the social emotional learning evenings that we held for parents and students. And those of you who have kindergarten through 6th grade students in our school know that we adopted a curriculum that is used every day for fundamentals on social emotional learning, and that helps our children learn about things such as caring and respect for each other and for themselves. So that's the effect strategic plans have. And it's not just a one-year goal, it's a multi-year goal that, again, I'd invite the public to witness the board engage in those good discussions about how we're supporting kids in the multi-year goals moving forward. There was a question about the 7th and 8th grade presentation and the goals and the status of that. And I'll again say that Mrs. Cavens will be in as an update over the summer, but as a full-blown presentation in August when we have a board meeting to present the presentation for the junior, senior high school. There was a question about assessments and finals. We did move away from finals this year, but we certainly did not move away from assessments. We started the year with the state required Start Strong assessments. We provided more professional development for our teachers to go ahead and dig down and look at those results from the Start Strong, look at task analysis, and change their instruction so we could better support and meet the needs of the students in each classroom and each individual student. We followed that up by adopting Link It this year, and we had Link It, what's called Form A, B, and C. A was the pre-year assessment to figure out where our students were and what they knew. Around January, February, we did in the elementary schools, we did a mid-year, it was part of the trimester marking period. We did a mid-year assessment. And again, if you'll remember, we passed on another professional development day to allow our teachers to have some afternoon time to look at those scores, dig through task analysis, and think about how they could improve instruction for each of their students. For me, by the way, it was wonderful to walk around to different classrooms and observe teachers engaged not only in the professional development, but then coming back and thinking about how they could update their, upgrade their instruction to meet their students' needs, because they took this very seriously. At the end of the year, we had Link It Form C, which was a summative for those grades. And that's the summative that will follow our students into the next year to inform next year's teachers about who the students are, who they see, and where they are and what their knowledge base is. Link It is just one example of many different assessments that were used, multiple forms of assessment. I'd be happy to spend a superintendent report talking about the different forms of formative and summative assessments that we're using in the district, because it's quite a lot. As Dr. Matrine said, it's some of those programs that we brought in because we hadn't done that in a long time. July 14th, I'll remind people, yes, Tasmin Weisberger is coming from Rutgers. That is an open public meeting. It's a professional development for our Board of Education and for our community. It should be an engaged discussion to allow our community members to ask questions about the new comprehensive health and phys ed. That was a question that came up. That is July 14th. As far as working with Little Ferry, I communicate actually quite a bit with Mr. Scarifield. We meet every Wednesday morning, and we meet once a month on Fridays. We exchange stories and ideas and how we could improve the coordination and the students coming from Little Ferry to our high school. So this year we reinitiated, for example, the shadow program, where different 8th graders came from Little Ferry and they shadowed upperclassmen and they got a sense of what this high school is. So we coordinate those kinds of successful events between Little Ferry and Ridgefield Park High School. As far as teachers leaving, which hurts because we did have 4 teachers leaving and we lost some really good talented teachers. One went to Florida, one went to New York to be with their betrothed at this point. And I'll be sharing the reasons. We have exit interview surveys that each one of those individuals has completed. They will be shared with the Personnel Committee of the Board of Education so we can look at Do we need to improve things? Is our salary good enough? Should we consider healthcare benefits, which some of the employees talk about on their exit interviews? So that is an area of improvement. The policy committee has in front of it, and we'll be looking at its August meeting, proposal and policy to look at what a quorum of the board represents. So they will have an opportunity to talk about that in policy. And Mrs. Gottlieb, I think I end with this. Yes, I will check out the credit for your child at Bergen Community College. My apologies for that. And there is one more thing. The shout out to all school special needs is not just for the money that they just gave, the $20,000. I'm excited that we're putting in a de-escalation room at Lincoln School. I think it's the first one in the district, and that will go in over the summer. All school special needs will contribute to that. For those of you who are not sure what a de-escalation room is, and it goes back to our social emotional learning. Some of our kids just need a timeout, but a timeout in a space where the lights are a little dimmer, where they have plush areas to sit and relax and chill a little bit and just de-escalate. So that room is going into Lincoln School. I'm really proud of that. And I'm thankful for the money that All School Special Needs is contributing to that. Thank you, President.
Okay. I'd like to join this meeting. Do I have a?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.